you were in the Air Force, and when did you arrive in Da Nang?
At Da Nang in mid-67, and then left in mid-68 for a full year.
And what was your job?
As a forward air controller, flying, I volunteered to go over there and fly fighters because I wanted to go fast and do the shoot 'em up thing.
Right.
And I pulled my resignation to do that. And the next thing I knew, I had orders to go fly a Cessna as a forward air controller. And so I ended up in I Corps, and then Khe Sanh, I did a whole tour in North Vietnam with my Cessna. And
Right.
that was up to almost 100 missions. And then they brought you out because then they'd have to send you home.
Right. So you're doing missions over Phu Bai, Dong Ha, Hue, Khe Sanh, kind of that whole northern I Corps area.
And through the DMZ and about 40 miles north to Dong Hoi, North Vietnam.
So you crossed the DMZ.
Oh yeah, that's where I had all 99.9 missions.
Wow.
Couldn't get 100, they'd send you home, and that would have been a short tour. Yeah.
Are you have a co-pilot with you, or are you by yourself?
Not normally, other than people that were in training to get familiar with the territory, or like we took historians and people up with us so they could identify with what was going on up there, and we'd fly a whole tour with them up there. I mean, a whole mission.
But most of the missions you're by yourself?
Yeah, at night we were not. We had all kinds of people flying with us at night that we qualified with night scopes.
Okay.
That you could light amplification,
Yeah.
and sometimes they were another pilot, and sometimes they were navigators, and sometimes they were intelligence people. But as long as they were someone who knew how to use the scope and could tell me how to move the airplane to keep everything in sight while we called for the fighters or the artillery or whatever we were going to use to destroy it.
Yeah. When you're flying these missions by yourself, do you have Cobras or Hueys with you as defense?
No, usually not usually, but when we flew with Marine Air, it was mainly the helicopters and gunships that were also involved in the close air support of the Marines on the ground.
Okay.
And so they would do their part, and then maybe they'd depart, and then we'd pick it up and we'd do our part. And it would just go back and forth. Sometimes the Marines would be involved with the helicopters in saving pilots of the Air Force or any service that had gone down, pick them up. But that required a lot of close air support as well, so that while the helicopters are doing their thing to get the good guys out, we had to keep the bad guys from getting them.
Right.
Yeah.
What altitude are you doing these missions at?
If we could do the mission like long-term reconnaissance over Laos and up north, well, not up north, there's too much anti-aircraft up north, so
Right.
the idea there was not to fly high, but to fly low, below 2,000 feet, but above 1,800.
So in between, small arms fire can get you below.
Exactly.
But,
Yeah.
anti-aircraft
And small
can get you
arms was pretty accurate up to 1,800 feet, and the AAA was pretty good at any altitude where they could see you. I probably escaped with my life because one mission up north, I was blowing up the bad guys' bunkers in the DMZ at concrete, and we were doing a great job.
Wow.
And so I told the artillery to stop shooting. There were the Marine guys down south of the DMZ.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to be flying in a circle with my binoculars and wait for the smoke to clear down there, and I'm going to figure out what we've done and what we need to do. And I was right in the base of the clouds, And so I was flying a circle around, and it's starting to clear up, and suddenly I hear boom, 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 boom. And I yelled at the artillery guys because they were on the frequency, and I said, "Hey, cut that crap out! I'm right in the line of sight, and you're probably shooting right through me." And the answer was, "We're not shooting."
Oh, that was NVA.
And then it quickly occurred to me
Wow.
that all of that was in the clouds above me, anti-aircraft fire from wherever they were, because I
Wow.
couldn't see them.
Wow.
So I did one of these dives down into the treetops, managed to pull it out before I hit the ground,
Wow.
and started zigging through the trees back to south of the DMZ. And I thought, man, if I knew where those guys were, I'd go back after them, but I'm a little low on gas, or maybe I won't bother.
Yeah. So one of the questions I always ask pilots is when they have experiences like this, because probably the next day you have another mission, or maybe even later
Every
that
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the process? I mean, because you have to put that away and do the next mission. I mean, what's the psychological process for that? Of just not getting paralyzed by this
First
stuff.
of all, know your mission and know how to do it, so that gives you confidence. And then when you're involved, especially in supporting troops on the ground, you sort of come out of yourself to do the job. Your job is to save those people down there and kill as many bad guys as you can. So that wasn't fear. It was more like whenever you got shot at really bad and it was all around you, it was panic and training.
Right.
And then afterwards is when you got to think, "Whew,
Wow.
I'm lucky to be alive,"
Right.
that kind of thing. So, but usually, if you're supporting the good guys, close support, and you have had a pretty good mission where you could directly engage with the North Vietnamese, and you got them and you saved the good guys, that was good enough.
That's compensation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there was, and it's like some of the times. I remember one time in particular, I was flying up north. Some big artillery pieces, anti-aircraft, had shot down one of our friends, and he crashed out on the ocean. And we had been avoiding this town because you don't want to blow up towns. You want to get bad guys.
Right.
And so this guy was flying through the town below treetop level at about rooftop level, and one of the roofs popped up and the gun goes bang, 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 you're dead. So we
Wow.
said, fuck that town.
Right.
We're not going to allow the bad guys to use them as cover.
Wow.
So here we were out destroying everything in the area, trying to find those guns, and I found them.
And it ended up being in that town.
Yeah, I found them, and there were a lot of them, like 18 guns in several different sites. And I had a fighter come in with exactly the right ordnance. It was what we call cluster bombs. And the first guy came in and clicked them all and said, if I was the bad guys, that's where I would be, over there. And so he clicks it off, and the cluster bombs are like a quarter-mile circle of hand grenades.
Wow.
And if you want to really bother the bad guys, you time them so they're going off sequentially.
Yeah.
So I'm watching it hit, and I think, good job, you're right on where I think they might be. And number two, he comes in, and as soon as he points his nose at that area to do his run, the ground erupted.
Oh, wow.
All these guns firing tracers and all that, and that continued flight after flight, airplane after airplane, anti-aircraft after one after the other. It was late in the day, and they actually formed a cloud layer above, maybe at about 6,000-7,000 feet, where it was blocking out the sun. And I thought, man, it kind of takes your breath away. And I was off to the side and they were over there. And my wingman, whose job it is to watch me because I'm doing the other job, blow out the bad guys.
Right.
And so I got to get closer so I can see how exactly what we're doing and tell the strike fighters closer where to go and what to do, or maybe even mark it. We used to mark targets with smoke rockets. Not that we were good enough to hit something with them,
Right.
unless you're real close. But once that white smoke puff went up, you could say, hit, come in on this heading and hit 100 meters long, or to the right, or short, or whatever, and that usually did the job.
Then the jets know where to hit.
Well, they do it in relationship to the smoke.
Right. Yeah.
But if the bad guys are shooting at you, then you know where to drop.
Right.
So anyway, here's this particular mission. I'm leading up to my after mission thing. I ended up trying to get closer. My wingman's up there, and my call sign was Covey 152, and he says, 152, get the hell out of there! They're coming after you. And I thought, oh yeah, it was entrancing. The streams of tracers going like this in front of the airplane, and then just coming at me closer and closer and closer. And I thought there wasn't enough time to do a perfect dive, so I jammed the nose over and then did something really stupid. I had a big bag over here full of ammunition and guns and hand grenades and things that I could use, smoke grenades. And the camera and everything were plastered against the ceiling because of the G's. And I let go of the airplane to try to save the camera instead of save my ass.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, how stupid is that? And I grabbed the airplane again because it was trimmed for straight and level, so when I let go of it, as I pushed it, it just came right up into the tracers.
Oh, wow.
So then I swung it over and did what I should have done in the first place and dove for the ground. And I swung out to the side. Well, one of the things that happened was they can only depress those guns so far, so I was just far enough away that they couldn't track me after I got to a certain altitude, and I don't even know what it was. And zoom, I'm up there, and then I'm back at it. And so anyway, now we're getting it's just smoke and dust over there. We really did a job on these guys, and we were very satisfied that we had gotten the guys that shot our buddy down. So that night at the club, and this is what led me to the story, having a drink with the boys, and we're talking about everything that went on, and everybody's saying, hey, dude, that was a great job, and so forth and so on. And then I thought, gee, this noise is, I'm not enjoying it. So I stood up and I started to leave, and I said, I feel really strange. I want to put my fist through that wall, or my head through that wall, and keep punching on the wall. And I thought, so this is how those fighter pilots get all wrapped up in a intense life thing.
Wow.
And so I got past that without doing it, because I probably would have hurt myself.
Yeah.
And I went outside, and then I was going back to the bachelor officers' quarters, and I thought, man, I'm really lonesome. I feel alone, and I just dealt with that loneness because it allowed me to reflect on the day and the mission, and almost dying several times, and I got back to the room, and then I captured it. I wrote in my diary. I did that about an hour a day, every day.
Wow.
And that was a kind of release for me. He was a radio operator. He said, we saw the North Vietnamese with professional digging equipment digging under us last night. they're going to blow the top off this hill. You need to do something. Okay, what? Because this would be as close as I had to get as close as I can get without hurting any of them.
To the Marines.
The Marines on the hill.
You got to bring the fire support to get the NVA, but the NVA very close to the Marines.
So the fighters came in. They had bombs and rockets and all that, and I had to destroy the north face of Hill 861 and work it over toward Hill 861A. And we moved all the troops out of that part of the circular defenses on the hilltop. And so I was most worried that I was going to kill some good guys, because we had some 500-pound bombs, and that makes big holes.
Right.
And
are you calling support also? So you've got Marine artillery, you've got air power. Are you also calling in fire support from naval vessels as well?
Yeah, where the fire support would be, like, for instance, at Long Bay, the planes that saved Long Bay were A-1 Sky Raiders. They're Korean vintage. They can fly low and slow, and they can hang around a long time. And they're the ones that blew up all the tanks and chased away the bad guys. Long Bay was about 10 Army guys, mainly. All the indigenous troops that fought with them.
The Montagnards there?
What's that?
The Montagnards that they had with them?
Right. Yeah, they were out with Spunky Hansen 28 Bravo, running around the camp trying to survive and kill bad guys.
Right.
So they were in a bunker built by the Navy Seabees, and it was a great bunker because the bad guys couldn't get in. They were shooting down and dropping grenades down the air vents and all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
And it finally came to the point where the A-1 Sky Raiders were chasing tanks and doing all that kind of stuff. We would direct here and there and there. And then there was a guy in front of me as a forward air controller who was dealing with them at that point. And the guys in the bunker said, if you don't, they'd blown aside, they dug a hole, they blew us out the side of our concrete bunker, and they're going to have our ass any time now. If you don't get them in the next couple of minutes, we're all dead.
Wow.
Said, okay.
Wow.
So this other fact was in charge. It's all in the clouds and fog on the ground. And then there's the space and then more clouds above. So he says, okay, I'm going to come on down with my airplane, the Cessna, and see if I think it's doable. And so he goes zinging into it, and sure enough, I thought I was going to see smoke and flames. So I was really pleased when poof, he came up out of the clouds, and he says to the Navy pilots, he says, if you guys will follow me, I think it's workable. And there was 4 of them, and they said, roger that, Lee's ready, 2, 3, 4. And so the O2 goes in, and then all these Sky Raiders follow him. And I thought, how can they do that? How can they manage not to kill each other flying in the fog when you can't even see more than a couple hundred feet?
Wow.
And so gradually they began to, it was like flushing quail. They came out of the fog. When they totally lost it and they had no idea where anybody else was, up they came. But they did a hell of a good job with their rockets and their strafe and everything. We found that out, confirmed by the commander of the North Vietnamese Army, who left some writings that were picked up later. So anyway,
they knocked out some of the tanks and the NVA tanks.
Yeah, they got, I think they got about 8 or 9 of the tanks.
Wow.
Of course, it was hard to tell, because just because it was immobile doesn't mean you killed it.
Right.
And they were hauling them off and putting them under trees and piling stuff on them so that we couldn't report them. Anyway, that continued. The North Vietnamese controlled Long Bay, and they were all over the place. And the airplanes were just, the A-1s were chasing them all over. If you can visualize this, they were chasing them across the dirt with their props in the dirt.
Props in the dirt.
Yeah, they're flying
Yeah.
maybe 2 feet above the dirt, going like this and strafing the bad guys. Eventually, the people that were making decisions on whether they're going to come get these guys out of this bunker radioed to the guys in the bunker and said, hey, we think you're going to have to hang out for another night. And the lieutenant in charge, whom I know very well now, said, bullshit, we're coming out of here. We're gonna die fighting. We're not gonna sit in here. And so they eventually did it. And the helicopters were kind of a pickup group, Army mostly, some Army, some Marine, were en route, and they landed near Long Bay at the old Long Bay camp. And the guys came out, 9 of them by then, and they made it down there, and they got on those helicopters and finally got out. There were North Vietnamese all around, and some of them was about 2 companies of North Vietnamese that were between Long Bay and Quai Son, waiting for Quai Son to send a ground team to save Long Bay. Quai Son was smart enough not to make themselves that vulnerable. And so here's this book that I got at the Quai Son reunion. It's a small book written by a Marine who became a journalist. And he ended up meeting a North Vietnamese soldier that he relates in the book, and then going to North Vietnam way back in the countryside for weeks to talk to him and write the book.
Wow.
And the guy gave his life story as a North Vietnamese troop.
Wow.
And as he was relating that battle and everything that happened around it that he could be aware of from his ground position, he was talking about the helicopters over at Long Bay and this and that and the other. And I read about a page and a half of that, and I said, wait a minute, that was me. He doesn't know what helicopters sound like in the distance. There were no helicopters there at that time.
Yeah, I mean, as low as they were, that was, is that it? That they were just so low? He just assumed they were helos, or?
The sound.
Yeah.
It was far enough away that it was mainly the sound. Any prop was a helicopter. But it wasn't. It was us O2s driving the A1 Sky Raiders to get the bad guys. So,
that's something.
Anyway, my thinking on that after he sat with this guy, he had the same feelings I had, and that is, this North Vietnamese troop was just a school teacher doing his job. They drafted him. He had the same emotions we did. First of all, it's good guy, bad guy, and then it's we're the good guys and they're trying to kill us, so we'll have to kill them. And it goes like that until after the war, when we get a little more reflective, and then he's just a guy again, just a teacher. And I thought, boy, I hate to think of what it really means, mano a mano, so to speak, for somebody like me to come zinging out of the sky and kill a school teacher on the ground who's doing the same job I'm doing, that is, doing what the government said. The Lord will have to sort that one out for me.
When you hear Quai Son, what most comes to your mind when you just hear somebody refer to Quai Son?
The survivors in the reunions at the association man for man. Some of them I actually shared airspace with, some of them I saved, some of them I couldn't save, but I established personal relationships with about 7 or 8 of them, where I could talk and they would know what I'm talking about, and they would talk and I would know what they're saying.
Do you think, you use that language, these guys I saved, and the Forward Air, you talk to the ground guys and they talk about the fire support people, the air controllers and so on, that often their lives were saved. Do you think that in the decades after the war, that's made kind of the memories, I don't know exactly how to put it, has that been helpful in a way, knowing that as you look back on the war, that for all the carnage and for all the hardship, there were a lot of lives that you played a role in saving as well?
Yeah, well, one of the things through my reunions of the Forward Air Controllers and others was that millions of South Vietnamese died after the war.
Right.
And that was because we lost. We lost because the bad guys used the war and anti-war group to help stop the war. In fact, the war was lost by the United States in the U.S. Congress when the anti-war young people were elected to Congress and bailed out on the peace treaty that was already written. And so the North Vietnamese had figured that out.
But they had an ally in the anti-war
All they had to do was outlast us and we'd leave.
Right.
And that's what we did. We quit. And so the South Vietnamese, hundreds of thousands of them, finally made it here.
Right.
And I really react when I meet them.